let us begin by first shilling the Islander merch, which is finally here. So Islander, of course, has been on sale and has been a massive success so far. But the merch was lacking a bit, but it's now here. It's up. So you can go over to shop.lotus.com. Wherever you are in the world, go and pick up the latest Islander merch. I'm actually going to get mine after the podcast. And we will move on. Right, so Nigel Farage has many people on his back at the moment because he seems to be trying to play two sides of an argument, and I don't think he can continue to do this forever. So you get people like Jack Bugbee, who have been long involved in British right-wing politics, going from one quite far side to a more moderate side. But the point he makes here is true. Farage has always been late to the game on almost every issue that he has actually championed. The only one he's actually been ahead of the curve on is Brexit, obviously. But everything else that he's done, he's always been behind the times on. And this is something that people have noticed. And so I just did a bit of a deep dive. So the first real public attention I could find with Farage talking about the grooming gangs was in 2014, after the release of the Alexis J report, when it was mainstream news, and I covered it at the time as well, and various other people did. And so he did that in December in 2014. And so this obviously got him some negative press coverage, but it was the right thing to do, and it was good that someone was doing it, so that's good. And so the next one is in 2015, where he said there were no-go zones for non-Muslims in France, which, again, good thing to be making a point of.
Well, how's the French Jewish population doing these days?
Exactly. And in 2015, he said there were Muslim ghettos. They're running Sharia law in England.
We have the most Sharia courts of any European country.
Yep.
So that's true.
Again, it's all true. He accused Muslims in 2015 of having split loyalties between the UK and Islam. And in 2015 again, he criticised female genital mutilation and Sharia law and Sharia courts, which again, not wrong. In 2017, he was on LBC talking about grooming gangs, when again, these weren't necessarily popular things to talk about either, so give him his credit where it's due. But again, he's definitely not the first to have done this. He's always travelling behind the wave.
Can I make a quick thing on that as well?
Well, yeah, go ahead.
So at ARC, I spoke to Ben Habib, and I said, have your outlooks on reform improved ever since Nigel Farage put out a video saying that Donald Trump is conducting mass deportations of illegal immigrants? Our countries are different, but the principle is the same. If you come here illegally, don't expect to stay. And Ben said, well, you would expect Nigel to do that now that Trump said it. And so what I think you're pointing out is a phenomena here of where the Overton window moves ahead of Farage, and when he sees it safe, he'll run to catch up with it.
Yes, and then he'll make a point of saying, I was always doing this. It's like, yeah, you were, after the fact. Which, don't get me wrong, it's not that you need to have to be the crest of the wave or anything. It's okay to come in after the fact, but then don't act like you were the crest of the wave. But anyway, so in 2018, he found that UKIP, his party, he wasn't the leader at the time, but he was during 2015 and 2014 when he was saying these things. In 2018, he leaves UKIP because of its preoccupation with Islam and grooming gangs. And he was like, well, we definitely won't become an anti-Islamic party. And it's like, okay, but what was all this then? What were you doing with all this? You know what? Muslims are forming ghettos or no-go zones in France. Muslims got split loyalty in the UK. I'm not hot on female genital mutilation in Sharia courts. Grooming gangs are a problem. Why am I surrounded by Islamophobes? I don't know, Nigel. I think maybe you were signalling to them, actually, with all of this. And so, obviously, he left UKIP, threw UKIP completely under the bus, and tried to sully their reputation, obviously. And this carries on until now, where Elon had his New Year's rampage about grooming gangs and Tommy Robinson and various other things. And, of course, Nigel Farage took the opportunity to throw Tommy Robinson under the bus, because there's just literally no one he won't throw. But on January the 6th, he did call for a grooming gang inquiry. Okay, that's good. At least, finally, he's calling for something useful to happen. Now, this was 3 months ago now. What's happened? Nothing.
So, the Reform Party position, because they voted for it, was for a national inquiry that had statutory legal powers to compel people to come and give evidence. And they then said, if this does not go ahead, we will pursue a private prosecution, like they did with the 2 men who attacked police officers at Manchester Airport, and then the Crown Prosecution Service eventually brought charges against them. So they do have within their power the ability to bring forward a private inquiry, and it might not be able to compel public officials who helped cover it up to give evidence, but you could easily televise it, live stream it, produce the findings in a report, and park your tanks on Starmer's front lawn as to why the government are unwilling to do this when lots of evidence hasn't been given their hearing before. And they haven't brought that forward, and they haven't brought any announcements forwards about it yet.
Yes, and at the Reform Conference in January, he did say that he was putting Keir Starmer under immense pressure because previous inquiries he'd called a shotgun approach, whereas he'd wanted a rifle shot dealing with gangs, quote, predominantly of Pakistani origin, preying on young, in most cases, working-class white girls. Okay, yep, so that's exactly the right kind of language, the right kind of approach, in fact. So what's happened with it? Well, the answer is just nothing. He welcomed the fact that Andy Burnham from Greater Manchester had come out and also endorsed the sort of same thing. And so you would think that he would pick up this momentum, get some work done, and actually make some noise and get some movement on this issue.
And have it be bipartisan as well, because if the smartest political play would be to say, I am going to launch a private prosecution or private inquiry, I would like the cooperation from the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, because even if I don't agree with the fact that she never raised it in her entire time as Parliament at the dispatch box, I would like her help to show consensus on this. And with Andy Burnham's cooperation, considering, and it's not his fault, but lots of these grooming gangs are operating in Manchester's own backyard. Yes. And so he would say, this is cross-spectrum support, and that would put even more pressure on Starmer.
Yes. Now, what this would also require is a spine of steel. You would have to have a backbone to do all of this, because the problem with Nigel is that he makes sure the wave is fully broken ahead of him before popping his head up to add his takes to it, in order to make sure that he doesn't get the blowback, because he personally doesn't like the blowback. And we know this from Catherine Blakelock, because she has worked with Nigel for something like 20 years. She knows him very, very well. And she's written an article for us that you can go and read on the website in your own time. But she says, quote, "A while back, Nigel was hounded by left-wing media for talking about Romanian men next door. He realised he'd made a big mistake. He did not want the type of criticism again, and certainly did not want to be called a racist. He also wanted continued access to mainstream media. Farage has studiously avoided making comments about grooming gangs, Sharia law, cousin marriage, or terrorist attacks since then. There's a fine line when honesty is sacrificed to expediency." So, I mean, he has made some comments, but nothing as strong until Elon Musk mainstreamed it in the discourse. And again, he's behind the crest of the wave. He has to follow as someone else has led.
Well, also, lots of other people led to that discourse becoming global who do not have Farage's status, wealth, and level of insulation. So I'm thinking Sam Bidwell, Charlie Peters. I contributed a bit.
I mean, everyone on Twitter was tweeting about it before Musk suddenly picked it up.
Exactly.
We made the discourse was what Musk was reacting to, which is great. You know, it's superb. Farage wasn't a part of it. Farage came in after it, just like coming back to Clacton after, they've got a poll out of 35%. Oh, Nigel Farage will parachute himself in then. So he's never at the crest of the wave. And this, just in case you're wondering, this is the quote, because they called him a racist for saying, "Do you really want loads of unwashed Romanian men next door to you?"
Well, we now know that in the stats that have just been released by the Centre for Migration Control, Romanian men are vastly overrepresented in the number of sex attacks they commit. So 10 years on, completely vindicated.
But the one time he was ahead of the wave on this, right, because they were going to open up to, Romania and Bulgaria.
Schengen zone, yeah.
Schengen zone, yeah. The one time Farage was actually ahead of the wave, he got slammed as a racist, and then that was it. Never again was he going to put himself first and lead on the issue.
Well, this is the confusing part. Reform's media strategy has been, at least as I've been told, very Ming Vars. They wanted to carry it softly over the line, at least past the local elections, when they can cement some wins. And they thought, in order to do that, they only had to focus on mainstream networks. Mm-hmm. For example, Zia Yusuf was invited for an interview on the New Culture Forum. Mm-hmm. He said it was too right-wing. Peter Whittle, gay man.
Yeah, but Peter Whittle, a very reasonable chap.
Yes, but if you were trying to say external perceptions...
How is he not respectable? But that's the point, isn't
Yes.
it? He didn't say he's not respectable. He didn't say he wouldn't be an interesting interlocutor. He said too right-wing, ideological position.
Ideological and governed by external perceptions, because the networks we would like to go on, like the BBC, Sky, ITV, Channel 4, even though they might have orchestrated a setup with a paid actor on Farage's Clacton campaign to rubbish the entire party, they would call us racists. So all of their media strategy is governed by avoiding being called racist by the people that are always going to be calling them racist. Like, it's perplexing.
They're literally paid to call you a racist. So anyway, moving on. So recently, Nigel Farage and Reform, in the wake of the Rupert Lowe debacle, have been ramping up the anti-immigrant rhetoric, which is interesting because it was only a couple of months ago on Bloomberg. He was like, I'm not anti-immigrant. It's like, okay, but this is definitely what's going to be considered to be anti-immigrant rhetoric when you say 1 in 4 sexual offences are committed by immigrants. And then Reform will arrest and deport those who commit offences. Unlike everyone else, I've been saying this since 2013. Well, I couldn't find anything from 2013. And I couldn't actually find that from 2013 either. But the most sort of spicy things we've already covered. But the point, again, being he's not on the crest of the wave. Rupert Lowe was at the crest of the wave, causing the problem that Nigel Farage is now saying this in response to. And this is a repeated pattern. Nigel is not a leader. He is, in fact, a follower. He is always behind where he needs to be. So anyway, the debacle between Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe obviously came to a head, and I think this is where he obviously got the actual target on his back, where of course Elon Musk sussed out Nigel Farage very quickly. Oh, he's not at the crest of the wave. He's not the guy like Trump who's going to stand up and say, you know what, I don't care about any of your opinions. This is the right thing, and we're going to stand on this. Nigel Farage didn't do that. He backed down. He equivocated. He essentially showed that he didn't have a spine. Whereas Rupert Lowe said, no, this is it, and I make no apologies. And so Elon was very quick to say, yes, this is the man, in fact.
Well, the interesting thing is, he didn't explicitly say that Rupert Lowe should take over. He said, I've never met him, but I like what he tweets.
Yes, but everyone knows what that means implicitly. And there's no way that Nigel Farage looked at that and said, yeah, he's not saying that Rupert Lowe should take over, even though he's just said, I'm not the guy and Reform needs a new leader.
The reason I'm just drawing that distinction
I know.
is because Rupert himself
He's never
had
made any claims.
never challenged Farage's leadership. Again, I'll say it.
And he's praised it, in fact. Like, if you look at, there are a bunch of Reform conferences where Rupert Lowe's got up and praised Farage's leadership.
Yeah, in private, he has been saying for a long time until this week, Nigel Farage deserves to be Prime Minister because of his tireless campaigning on Brexit.
It's exactly my opinion on it. I would have happily supported Nigel Farage if he hadn't, frankly, been doing the things he was doing.
You said it was the conclusion of his narrative arc.
Exactly. And I agree, it should be. But ultimately, Farage has just not stepped into the role. He needs to be at the crest of the wave, leading, not following. And this, again, I think is why Elon Musk sussed him out so quickly, because he wasn't prepared to stand on the point of principle. So anyway, the war between Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage is going really badly for Nigel Farage, as far as I can tell. Farage came out here and said that there was a parliamentary investigation into Rupert Lowe.
Didn't he get the date wrong as well? He said it was on the 29th of February.
He did. He said he was reported on the 29th of February. There was no leap year this year. So there was no 29th of February. I mean, easy mistake to make, I guess. I don't want to make too much of it, but that didn't happen. And Adam here has written to the Parliamentary Investigations Office, and they're like, no, there is no case open against Rupert Lowe.
You should follow Adam, by the way, because he does phenomenal work, especially
Yeah,
on the Grooming Gang transcripts. Yeah. He's been the one trying to procure them. So well done, sir.
He's doing great work, and he's done good work here. So that's not true. So interesting. And then Rupert Lowe tweeted this. You can see he says, there have been repeated attempts from senior Reform figures that my language on the rape gangs was too strong, too robust, too tough. And then he explains and goes down and says, my view is clear. Anyone with any knowledge of these crimes and who failed to act is as guilty as the rapists themselves. We must deport foreign nationals who knew. If that means entire communities go, then that is what must happen. Now, that is a strong statement, but how could you find yourself in disagreement with it? You look like you're happy with that, Harry.
That's a great statement. No, that's a fantastic statement. Very strong, entirely necessary. Yeah. And it's also worrying that opening statement that you made about the fact that him just having strong rhetoric at all on the grooming gangs causes issues within Reform. That's a bit of an indictment of the character of those people in Reform, because why would you be more outraged of him talking about it rather than the actual grooming gangs themselves? That's very establishment mainstream kind of position to take.
Old style of politics, right?
Yes.
And it's showing that Farage is actually kind of like yesterday's man, because actually what the Times now call for is someone like Rupert Lowe to say, you know what, this is the statement. If you find that too much, that's too bad. I'm not walking this back. And he says, I won't be silenced on that by anyone, because this is what I believe, because this is the right thing. And he is, of course, completely correct. If you were party to a rape gang by like just staying silent on it because of familial loyalty or something like that, then you're culpable. You are culpable.
You're part of a larger conspiracy to conceal it.
Then exactly. You're culpable, and therefore you are also guilty of allowing this to happen. Like, if I knew about that, because first thing I do, go straight to the police. Doesn't matter who it is. Obviously, you don't.
Within your community, you don't want the rapist living next door, but similarly, you don't want the person who knew about the raping and didn't say anything and didn't go to the police living next
consent.
door either.
Well, it's not just silence. This is at the trials, as we've covered before. The daughters will shout out, "I love you, Dad." The families, when they've been interviewed by other Muslim women, will say, "Have you seen how those white girls dressed? They're kafir. They deserved it."
There was a BBC sort of mini documentary where they were interviewing a bunch of Muslims, and there's this one Muslim girl in a dance hall just doing ballet or something, and she was like, "Yeah, we all knew, but we all just said nothing." It's like, okay, all right,
You can't live alongside those. You can't do it, and
that's not fair.
If I may make one quick comment, the reason that Nigel Farage is looking like yesterday's man now is the same reason that Rupert Lowe has gained such an organic following over time. It's because he understands how Twitter has completely changed the game.
Yep.
It has not just allowed him to circumvent a coordinated media and party press release reputation destruction job with a few tweets in a few days, but it's also allowed him to circumvent the gatekeeping, which tightly controls the Overton window, because Farage is operating according to what the dinner party circuit, what the donors, what the media, and what fellow politicians will deem as being racist. Whereas Rupert Lowe has looked at X, gone, hold on a minute, this was an effective register of public mood, because the overwhelming sentiment on X was MAGA, and then Trump won the popular vote. So this means this is where the public are. So I'm just going to speak directly to the public, unfiltered, and gaining a following because of it. And so he's not just thwarted the reputation destruction effort, but he is actually, like a true populist, giving the people permission to say what they already believe, and also leading the people to said promised land.
And that's the important thing. Rupert Lowe's following is organic because he is leading from the front.
Yes.
He is not waiting for someone else to clear the ground and make it sanitized so I can step on without getting too much slime from the media on me. No, he said, right, I don't care. I'm going to say what my piece. This is what's going to happen. And people are rushing in to follow him. Again, the distinction in leadership styles could not be more stark. Farage is always behind the curve because he doesn't want to get in trouble. Rupert Lowe has just said, no, we're pushing through. And
this was an interesting point that AA made on his stream yesterday about this, which was that MAGA was very eager to take advantage of the momentum that was being built online, and very, very eager to liaise with and interact with the online communities who appreciated MAGA and were supportive of him. Farage doesn't want anything to do with these people. Rupert's happy to interact with us. Rupert's happy to speak to people. Farage sees it all as beneath him because it's beneath the Westminster dinner table class.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so like I said, at the beginning of this, Rupert said there was a belief from senior reform figures that my language was too robust and they were trying to silence him. Well, that's an allegation. So normally when something like this would be alleged, the person would come out and deny it. And so then it's a he said, she said, no, you've got to side with the person who says that didn't happen because you need affirmative proof. Well, that would be the case unless they just come out and say, yeah, I did do that. I silenced Rupert Lowe on that. So Nigel Farage admits that he did silence Rupert Lowe and says, right, even no matter what happens now, he'll never be allowed back into reform. So, okay, brilliant. You've lost your brightest star. And a person
one good MP gone.
Yeah, exactly.
Who next, Nigel?
The guy who was doing something like 56% of all the work, the guy who was actually actively fundraising to help his constituents. He said obviously there'd be no way back for him. And Nigel Farage says in his speech in Essex that he talks about, what I stopped him from using was the word repatriation. I told him not to use the word repatriation as well as mass deportations. So you did silence him on that. You were just saying, he says, you silenced me on this, and you say, I silenced you on that.
His exact words were, I thought it was a very grave, dark, and dangerous use of language. Right, correct. So what Farage is saying there...
School mom tone policing.
Categorically, one, it's very feminine to be governed by external perceptions. Rupert Lowe doesn't do that. Secondly, Farage is explicitly saying the two-tier justice system that he was rallying against in the aftermath of Southport will remain in place for illegal immigrants. Because now, if you are refusing to deport every single illegal immigrant in this country, that means you are comfortable with a level of lawbreaking.
Yes.
And so Reform's party platform, much to our dismay, is we will allow illegal immigrants to stay in the country because we don't want to be called racist.
Yeah. And
what is the point?
Because, it's very grave, dark language. It's like, don't you think the rapes are worse?
Yeah.
Like, sorry, I hate to get on Norm Macdonald on you on this, but I think the grooming gangs were worse, actually, than the language Rupert Lowe has used. And Rupert Lowe, he was told not to say it at the Reform conference, and he said it anyway. You got to love it. You got to love that kind of attitude. Again, that is what leading from the front is. These people are going to object to this, but it's the right thing to do, and so I'm going to do it. Anyway, so Matt Goodwin, came out in defense of Nigel Farage on this, and I hate this now because, unfortunately, like, you're going to have to pick a side. You're either with the person leading from the front and telling the truth, or you're with the person who leads from the rear and is telling lies, frankly.
Not just lies. As Ben Habib pointed out, it's not just that Farage says Lowe can't come back. It's why would Lowe want to come back when Farage has supported bringing what seem like trumped-up charges against him, which, if they were successful, Rupert Lowe would go to prison.
Yep.
So if you support Farage at this stage,
ruined forever.
Yeah, if you support Farage at this stage, it's not just mean girl reputation destruction. It's the potential of sending him to prison for saying something that he's saying he didn't even say.
Yeah.
So look, I really like Matt. I've had him on my show twice.
I've had Matt on the show.
Matt was one of the two people in Reform that's basically keeping my faith in there, alongside Rupert.
Yep.
I think he's not only picked the wrong side here, but if Farage and Zia Yusuf are not below these tactics, Matt, do you not think they won't come for you next? Because you are the most eligible successor to Farage currently in the party. Yep. And if there's one thing they can't abide, especially Zia Yusuf, it's people getting in his way.
I mean, everyone around Farage must understand they're a marked man. Like, he's got such a long history, we covered it in the podcast earlier in the week, of his long history of throwing people under the bus and destroying them to the best of his ability, which is what he's just tried with Rupert Lowe. You're not safe with him, Matt. He will do this to you. Anyway, Matt had this contradictory, an argument with Rupert Lowe, because Rupert Lowe pointed out, well, no, they did censor him on the term mass deportations. And so Matt said, well, in reality, it's an unworkable, unpopular, and impossible policy. I don't think that's true, Matt. And I know because, like Connor, I read your Substack. Connor, you replied to this. Do you want to just explain your reply very quickly?
Yeah, so Matt was alleging that Rupert Lowe had called for the deporting of British nationals, which is not true. He's never said that ever. And in fact,
I think that might be in reference to his statement that we need to deport the communities that hid the crime.
He said foreign nationals.
Yeah.
Explicitly, he said foreign nationals and dual nationals. And according to the law, and there's two pieces of law here, the 2007 Nationality and Borders Act, plus under the Blair government, means that if you commit an offence that gives you a 12-month prison sentence, under Section 32, you are automatically eligible for deportation, unless under Section 33, human rights law intervenes. But it's in the Reform Manifesto to leave the ECHR and abolish the Human Rights Act. So that would make these deportations automatic. Yeah. So what is 13,000 foreign criminals deported if not a mass deportation? And then the other thing on that, the Shamima Begum principle, which I know that Nigel Farage doesn't agree with because he spoke about bringing her back, despite her rotting in a Syrian desert somewhere, deservedly. It means that if you have dual nationality, we can take away your British nationality so that you aren't stateless and you can belong to another country if you've committed a crime against the country. These are all popular positions, and I know this because we read Matt's Substack, and in Why the Woke Left Lost, a recent Substack that Matt pointed me to when I wanted to make the case in another article for why this is an unpopular position, the position that immigration should increase, all of the other suite of like woke progressive opinions are only 8 to 10% of the country. Whereas the Telegraph found recently that Donald Trump's mass deportation policy, if you go back to that previous graph there, has, I think it's 58% public support. So if we just copied Donald Trump's mass deportations policy, which he called mass deportations and won over Hispanic men with, Reform would win more than 20% of the electorate that they actually need to get a majority.
And it's kind of crazy that we're even debating this because obviously stripping the British nationality from a dual national and sending them home is the right thing to do if they commit a crime in this country.
Yes.
Like, obviously the public are going to be behind this. And so saying, well, this is an unpopular and unworkable policy, it's like, well, no, it doesn't seem unworkable at all. And it seems to me that it would be very popular. And it wouldn't take very much of a of a media push to get people to understand this is actually a good thing.
It's not just not unworkable at all. One, I remember the Ryanair boss proposing that you could use as flights. But two, as I pointed out there, in the recent quarterly migration statistics, in 2024, British airports processed 132.3 million arrivals. Now, let's say the conservative estimate of illegal migrants in 2017 by Pew Research, 1.2 million, is accurate. It's more than that, right? That's a couple of weeks. If you mobilised it, a couple of weeks.
Privatise it. Anyway, moving on. So Rupert Lowe came out and said, well, look, I make a promise to you all today. I will hold this inquiry into the Pakistani rape gangs. I will source the funding. I will make it happen. Plans now already underway. Reform and Farage failed to do so. I will not. When I make a promise, I will keep it. Did we think that anyone else in Reform was going to do this in Rupert's absence? No, obviously not. And so Farage finally, after all of this, decided to respond to Rupert Lowe. Now, this, as you can see from the ratio, in fact, the ratio is worse than this.
It's 3.7 to... No, it's 4.5.
It's worse.
It's 4.5 to 2.2. Yeah. I mean, I did reply to Farage, and I got more likes.
Everyone did. Everyone did. Like, you know...
Rupert's got 17. Wow.
Yeah,
oh,
exactly. Rupert's 17 to his 2. So Nigel Farage said, I have fought against the rape gangs for over a decade. Well, I don't think I would say that, Nige. You have mentioned it in passing a few times, and then you left UKIP because Jared Batten took you seriously and wanted to do something about the rape gangs. And so you're like, what, Tommy Robinson? Islam? Rape gangs? I'm out of here. You're weirdos. Why have you become a party of weirdos obsessed with Islam and rape?
You got this YouTuber in here now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it didn't. I wasn't the thing that came up. It was about the obsession with the rape gangs in Islam. It's like, okay, but have you campaigned against them or not? Why did you leave UKIP then? If you've been fighting the rape gangs, what would be the reason? Right.
There's also a difference between condemning it and proposing a policy to do something about it.
Yeah, but which he didn't do, obviously. And then for him to say, he carries on and says, for Rupert Lowe to say that I tried to prevent him from talking about this is monstrous. Well, you admitted that you did. You were like, no, you can't talk about it in this way. You have to talk about it in my way or else. He told Lee Anderson that he would slit the throat of the Reform Party. That seems to be a lie. He didn't, because then this isn't a lie that's morphed as well, because it began with, he said he'd slit Zia Yusuf's throat, which wasn't true. And now it's, he would slit the throat of the Reform Party, which also wasn't true. He said the Reform Party would slit its own throat if it didn't do whatever it was he thought it needed to do. And so he says, Lowe is out to cause damage and should be ignored by our supporters. So maximum damage control. That's what this is. And that was bloody foolish because, of course, this gave the opportunity for Rupert Lowe to respond, because this is what happens when you engage in the dialectic. And now the dialectic is moving, and it's moving in our direction easily.
So much for Twitter not being real life.
So much for Twitter not being real life, right? So desperate, Rupert says, I said that Reform leadership was slitting its own throat by launching this horrific smear campaign against me with zero credible evidence. And so far, has anyone seen any evidence? No. What we've seen is Rupert Lowe's own staff going, no, we love Rupert, you're talking nonsense. He says, I raised questions of reform policy, communication and structure. The day after you kicked me out, that's your real motive. Seems to be the case, Nige. Seems to be the case, because Rupert, again, was leading from the front, and you were not happy with this because you want to lead from the back. And so Farage went on Australian Sky News this morning, and very, very interesting.
But I have to ask about what's been around this week, that one of your MPs seems to have had a bit of a crack, suggesting that all of it is, you being led as you being the messiah of the party. Well, I'll give you the tip. The only reason there's any Reform MPs is because of this bloke on the screen right now. Let's be honest about that, okay? So tell me about Rupert Lowe and why he's wrong, and has he apologised? And is all of this just the people who hate trying to find a way to break you up?
Well, look, he has done some good work as an MP, lots of written questions, a big Twitter X following. But I've been here before. You build something up and somebody else thinks they can do a better job than you. So I think it's no secret he'd like to be leader. He thinks he's going to be the next Prime Minister. He even said to a group of us the other week, I will destroy anyone that gets in my way. Well, I'm sorry, but I'm in the way. And to have said what he said just 2 weeks before nominations go in for the English County Council local elections, to attempt to spread demoralisation amongst our thousands of volunteers who are out there getting ready, really is a very, very bad thing to do.
So the dialectic has moved. It's These were legitimate complaints by Rupert Lowe's staff when he was threatening Zeus's life. Well, yeah, the staff dropped their veil of anonymity and said it's bogus, and also it took 3 to 4 months for Yusuf to report said threats, so they're not credible. But it's justified us calling the police on him because he challenged my leadership and he spread demoralization.
But notice
He did give the game away.
he gave it completely
Didn't he?
away. Like
He wants to be leader. I thought it was about actual complaints from within.
I
his
thought-
I thought it was about crimes.
Yeah.
Farage.
I thought he was bullying people. No, he wants to be the leader. And but Rupert Lowe has never said this. He's never said, I want to be the leader. What he has done is shown leadership. That's what he's done. He's led from the front. He's gone and gone, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And Farage perceives that as someone trying to steal the leadership from him.
To be fair,
Because he's refusing to get into
to
it.
be fair to Farage's perspective, Farage is just standing there thinking, "Oh God, this guy's actually useful. Oh God, he does things.
that's
Oh God, I don't really do anything actually. Now that I think about it, oh God, he might take my job if I keep being useless. Smear him."
That is exactly what has happened, because every stage of Farage's career, he's been behind the curve. So someone else, if they get ahead of him, Stephen Wolf, Douglas Carswell, whoever it is, no, you're the problem. I've got to continue riding behind the wave rather than being at the crest of it.
Ben Habib's so vindicated.
Yeah, and absolutely. But that and then is it about allegation? No, it's about I'm afraid that he's going to be a better leader than I am. And honestly, at this point, anyone would be a better leader than you, Nigel.
I do love the implication is that Farage just goes, "Oh my God, someone's more popular than me. Call the police."
Anyway, just this has been going on for quite a while, but just to summarize what has also happened, apparently Elon Musk is considering backing Rupert Lowe to form a rival party to Nigel Farage. Do it. Don't join the Tories, Rupert. The Tories, you'll get sucked in to the arcane machinery of the Tory party and they'll swallow you up and chew you out. You know what I mean, right? You don't do it. Form your own party. Do it right. Set the foundations down, do something good, and something amazing could come of it. We've got 4 years. That's a lot of time, man.
And we will follow you into battle.
Islander issue 3 is now available to purchase from shop.lotus.com and is the next step in the story that we are telling with this magazine. For this issue, we have collected piercing and esoteric essays from the finest right-wing minds on the theme of our civilizational winter. Each of our authors is an expert in bringing forth the most important hidden revelations from the lowest reaches of the soul, and it has all been beautifully rendered in a medievalist revivalist aesthetic. For this issue, I commissioned a new translation of the ancient Anglo-Saxon poem, The Wanderer, and have written a companion essay exploring how it is a reflection of our modern experience. I personally feel that this is the most important thing I've ever written, so I will be looking forward to your feedback on it. We have resolved our distribution issues, with the magazines being printed in advance of the orders, so we can guarantee that you will receive your copy very soon after ordering it. And you will also receive email updates so you can see exactly where it is. Hopefully, issue 3 can provide you with the space and context to engage in deep reflection about the nature of our circumstances, to discover hidden truths about yourself and find the resolve to make it through our spiritual exile.